Yeah. So let me introduce Miguel de Paladeo, who's going to talk about the Lowering SIB Transaction Costs group and the findings of that discussion. Miguel.
Thank you. Well, it's easier to speak to a smaller audience. Very shortly, this idea of the transaction costs of the social impact bonds. Well, you should be very happy to know that the conclusion of the group was that this is a myth, right? So the myth about the very impossible and complex transaction cost of creating, designing, implementing social impact bonds. That's it. Say one more. So basically, it's a myth compared to. So we have to compare it to traditional contracts, right? So traditional contracts for social impact, social transformation. So there are certainly an additional cost created perhaps by novelty, because we are basically trying to create all new sorts of contracts and relationships and partnerships. There are some additional costs, but this cost will just disappear as we keep on developing the sector and the market. So certainly, and we don't need to start from zero. We were told that the private partnerships movement, the PPP, has been working a lot already on many of the issues that we are confronting, and therefore we can start using some of the knowledge that has been accumulated in this sector to develop social impact bonds. And in any case, there was a suggestion to why don't we start learning to share a bit more and open up contracts, open up feasibility studies, open up legal instruments that we have, that we are already being developed for the 107 social impact bonds that we have in process. So one thing was novelty. So this brings additional cost and it's going to go down. The second one was higher rigor than traditional contracts. So yes, it is data intensive. It requires prototyping. It requires flexible performance management. Now, my question is, shouldn't this be part of all single social change contract? So no additional costs. The third one is a scale. Now, obviously, programs that require a lot of design and are so intensive in design, in data management and so on, require some additional scale so that the relative cost of designing gets down. So as scale goes up, we assume that this is going to be also going down. So what are the real additional costs of social impact bond compared to the traditional contracts? There is one that is I'm facing now in Barcelona that is very difficult, which is pricing outcomes. Because there are many mistakes, you need to build confidence around the pricing, and that's exactly a new thing that needs to be added to any other traditional contract. Or managing one additional stakeholder, investors, right? So it's always an additional cost. But perhaps also there is another thing, which is anticipating many of the cost to the design phase. So that's what we were saying, that shouldn't this be part, this rigor, shouldn't this be part of the project of any contract? Well, with the social impact bond, you have to anticipate it to the moment where you don't have yet the money. So this is the complexity. How do you fund these additional costs at the beginning instead of having them in the middle? So that's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was very clear. Maria del Rosario, I think you're delegated to summarize the next group on measuring.
Sorry, I forgot one thing. No, I'm going to be killed by the rapporteur.
Okay, all the best in the future.
Yes, that many costs actually result in residual value that are extremely valuable to service providers. So sometimes these additional costs result in something that, even if it doesn't go through the social impact bond, it gets a lot of value to the system. Thank you. Sorry.
Always good to have enthusiasm.
Thank you. Okay, I am in charge of giving some highlights from the meeting of the second group. Some of the questions, what are the effects of having or working with the impact bonds? that we shift from inputs to outcomes. When we are in the philanthropy world, sometimes we talk about how many people we have trained, but we don't speak about what was the quality of the trained, how many people get hired. So we shift from income to outcomes. And the iterative performance management, the development of data systems to be more rigorous. Sometimes in the NGOs, we are not as rigorous with the data, with the evaluation, with the impact of evaluation. Another point is the costing, the price of inaction, and another point is collaboration. Mark talked about and shared with us the experience of the impact bonds in Bern with the refugees. And one of the points that he mentioned that I was a little bit like surprised is that even in Switzerland, he was talking about the difficulty with the data. In Colombia and in the developing countries, we have difficulty with the data, but not in Switzerland. So I was a little bit surprised. And he talked that these models, the premium of model, some social institutions criticize the payment by results. And we are in the philanthropy world, and we consider that this is the path that we have to go through, talking about results, measurements, to be more rigorous with the data and with the measurements. And the target of success was criticized by the social institutions. And Arthur make a very good presentation questioning the role of the government and the impact bonds, inviting to think about the private sector, the banking, the community. So that's like the main points of the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Then on the ethical debate, we had Klaus Ammann. Excellent.
Thank you. Well, I wish I had a structured summary here to present, but if this session on the ethical questions of SIB showed something, then it was that it's very difficult to talk separately about ethical questions from everything else. We started some place and we got into the functioning of SIBs, and what we realized is that, well, we started off with the HIB, the humanitarian impact bond by the ICRC, and we saw that under these specific conditions, a lot of ethical questions can be resolved, but then there is obviously a lot of reward-based financing mechanisms that differ a lot from this HIB, and then there are a lot of questions that are open, but it was quite controversial. We got into politics, into discussion about what is democracy, and so as a summary, we can maybe say that all SIBs have great advantages. They always evoke ethical questions, and it needs a great effort to be conscious of them, but you can find answers in most cases, and I would say we would all agree that SIBs are not a silver bullet, but ethical questions can, if treated well, they can be resolved.
And then there was an outcome funder roundtable. I don't know if Zach or someone else got delegated to summarize that, or will it remain mysterious? And yes. Excellent, but I think you need a microphone.
Sorry, this will be short because it's a bit off the cuff. So just a quick summary of the Outcome Funder session. My name is Radana Krova. I work for DFID in the UK. We really wanted to take this up as an opportunity for Outcome Funders to talk about the value of development impact bonds, about our relative experiences with development impact bonds, and about What we think is next is there potential for us to right now start working on sort of social impact bonds 2.0, trying to take this to the next level. One of the ideas being as involved as pooling all our funding into a collective outcomes fund to really drive down the transaction costs of development impact bonds and really signal our commitment to the instrument. I think a lot of the debate centered on the fact that there is, outcome funders have different experiences. Some are more ready than others to commit. Some understand the instruments better than others. So there isn't a ready-made solution that we could all adopt right now. But we committed today to spend the next couple of months working together in an outcome funder working group to have an organized debate and continue the discussion after today around possible avenues for collaboration, whether that's an outcome fund, a joint platform, or another way that we can all link up to you, to professional organizations that are working in the field, to investors and NGOs and charities, social enterprises that are coming up with really exciting projects so as to not miss the opportunity for a sort of shift in the momentum on impact bonds. Thank you.
Excellent.